I wasn't alone, I just didn't know it yet. The Kid in the Yard. A few years ago, I went through one of the worst periods of my life. I was in my mid-30s, newly single after a devastating breakup with my girlfriend. Of 5 years, the woman I thought I'd marry and start a family with. The emotional wreckage left me isolated and hollow. Days blurred into weeks. I'd get up, drag myself to work without saying a word to anyone, and come home to collapse in bed. Weekends were worse, no eating, no moving, just endless hours lost in meaningless movies I barely even registered. But I'm not here to drown you in my sob story. I'm doing better now. Even so, I sometimes catch myself wondering about the life that could have been. Anyway, this happened on a Saturday night, sometime after 9. I was slumped on the couch in my bedroom, half watching some forgettable action flick. My mom had been calling all day, checking on me, but I couldn't bring myself to pick up. I wasn't ready to hear the concern in her voice. At some point, I backed out to the streaming menu, too restless to focus. I aimlessly clicked on some random horror movie, the kind with a grainy thumbnail and a title you forget even while watching it. The film was terrible. The dialogue was so low I had to blast the volume just to catch a few words, only to get my eardrums blown out by the next cheap jump scare. What kept me watching wasn't the plot. It was the weird sound I started noticing. Every minute or so there'd be this sharp metallic clang. It didn't match anything happening on screen. No metal props, no warehouse scenes, it was completely out of place. And it sounded identical every time, like a bad loop. Half amused, half baffled, I kept the movie running. About halfway through, I got up to use the bathroom. For some reason, I paused the movie, probably out of habit. When I came back, I hovered over the play button. Clang. The sound rang out again, only now the movie was paused. I froze. The screen was still. No audio. But the clang had been loud and unmistakable. It was in the house. I sat perfectly still, listening. After almost a minute, there it was again. Clang. A cold wave of fear washed over me. I jumped up, grabbed a knife from my desk, and tore through the house, checking every room, closet, and corner. Nothing. No signs of forced entry. No open doors. Everything was exactly how I'd left it. I was halfway up the stairs, still shaking, when I heard it again. A little quieter this time, coming from my bedroom, and then it hit me. The windows. It was spring. I'd gotten into the habit of cracking the windows open at night. Maybe the noise wasn't inside after all. Maybe it was coming from the backyard. Carefully, I crept to one of the windows and peeled the curtain back. Standing out on the lawn, illuminated by the faint glow of the porch light, was a kid. A small boy, maybe 10 years old, holding a long PVC pipe. Near him, one of my deck chairs was tipped over, out of place. As I watched, he lifted the pipe and smashed it against the metal frame, clang. He must have seen me. As soon as our eyes met, he struck the chair again, harder. I stumbled back from the window, heart racing. What was a kid doing alone in my yard after dark? Was he lost? Hurt? I wanted to believe it was innocent, that he was just a confused, scared kid. But the longer I thought about it, the more it didn't add up. Why hadn't he knocked on the door? Why had he been standing there for almost an hour? Against my better judgment, I decided to help. I made my way toward the back door, flipping on the porch light to make things less intimidating. Hand on the doorknob, something deep inside me screamed, "Stop." It didn't feel right. Slowly, I backed away from the door and crept to a small window beside it. Peeking through the blinds, I spotted them, 2 men in black clothes, crouching just below the window frame, hiding, waiting. One of them turned his head and locked eyes with me through the glass. I didn't hesitate. I dropped the blinds, sprinted upstairs, and dialed 911. Before I could even finish the call, I heard pounding at the back door. Then a crash. They were inside. I bolted into the bathroom and locked the door, heart slamming against my ribs. I heard footsteps on the stairs getting closer. I watched the doorknob jiggle, then a loud bang as someone kicked at the door. Barely able to breathe, I screamed at the top of my lungs. "I've called the police. They're on their way." Instantly, the footsteps retreated. Doors slammed downstairs. Then silence. The police arrived within minutes. I told them everything, but without cameras or clear descriptions, there wasn't much they could do. They did take it seriously, especially because of the kids' involvement. They said using a child to bait someone outside wasn't typical. It was a level of premeditation that suggested these guys weren't just desperate. Burglars. I moved out of that house not long after. Nothing like that has ever happened to me again. But sometimes late at night I wonder about that kid, whether he was a victim too, or something worse. The man in the hallway. This happened about a year after the first incident. I was still living alone, but in a new place, a small one-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of a decently maintained building. It wasn't a fancy place, but after everything that had happened before, I was just happy to have a fresh start. I tried to convince myself that moving would fix everything. New place, new routines, new life. For a while, it worked. I stayed busy, reconnected with old friends, started working out again. I even got better at answering my mom's phone calls. Life wasn't perfect, but it was stable. Until one night. It was a Tuesday, I remember that, because I'd just gotten back from a long shift at work. I was exhausted, mentally checked out. I kicked off my shoes, tossed my keys on the counter, heated up some leftover Chinese food, and sank into the couch to unwind. Around 9:30 p.m., I decided to call it an early night. I brushed my teeth, turned off the lights, and climbed into bed with my phone. I was scrolling mindlessly, half watching YouTube videos, when I noticed it. The hallway light, the one right outside my bedroom door, was on. I was positive I had turned it off. I'm weird about that. It's one of those little habits I have. Bathroom light off, hallway light off, bedroom door closed. But there it was, a sliver of yellowish light bleeding in under the door. At first, I thought maybe I'd just forgotten. I told myself I was tired, that it was nothing. Still, something about it made me uneasy. I got out of bed, opened the door, and stood in the hallway staring at the light switch. I turned it off, walked back to bed, closed the door, locked it, sat down. A few minutes later, as I was starting to drift off, click. The hallway light turned on again. I sat up, heart thudding in my chest. No footsteps, no sounds. Just the soft hum of the hallway light through the thin crack under the door. Now I was fully awake. I grabbed the bat I kept under my bed leftover. Paranoia from my last home, and approached the door. I pressed my ear against it, straining to hear something, a shuffle, a whisper, anything. Silence. With one sharp breath, I unlocked the door and threw it open. The hallway was empty. No movement, no noise. Just the quiet buzz of the fluorescent bulb. I checked the whole apartment. Kitchen, bathroom, closets, even under the bed. Nothing. Maybe the wiring was bad. Maybe it was a short circuit. I told myself a million logical things, trying to smother the creeping sense of wrongness. But just to be safe, I locked my bedroom door again and left the hallway light on this time. Hours later, around 2 a.m., I woke up needing to use the bathroom. Groggy, I shuffled out of bed, rubbing my eyes, and froze. The hallway was pitch black. The light was off again, and standing at the far end of the hallway, barely visible in the shadows, was a figure. I couldn't make out any details. It was just the outline of a man, tall, thin, completely still. For what felt like forever, I didn't move. I didn't blink. I barely even breathed. Every cell in my body screamed at me to run back into the bedroom, to lock the door, to call for help. But I couldn't move. The figure didn't move either. He just stood there, silent. Finally, I managed to take one shaky step backward, then another. As soon as I moved, the figure lurched forward. Not running, not walking. Just a sudden, jarring shift closer, like a puppet being yanked by invisible strings. I bolted into the bedroom and slammed the door shut, locking it and bracing myself against it with all my weight. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped my phone while dialing 911. I whispered to the dispatcher, trying not to make any noise. Told them someone was inside my apartment. As I spoke, I heard its slow, deliberate footsteps on the carpet outside the door. Closer, closer. Then a gentle tapping on the door. 3 soft knocks, followed by a voice, low, calm, almost conversational. "Let me in." I didn't answer. I just pressed my forehead against the door and prayed the lock would hold. A few agonizing minutes later, I heard sirens outside. The footsteps retreated. By the time the police got there and kicked open the front door, the apartment was empty. No signs of forced entry. No broken windows. Nothing stolen. The only thing they found was a smudge, a greasy, palm-sized smear right in the middle of my bedroom door, as if someone had been leaning against it. I moved out the following month. I don't know who or what that thing in the hallway was, and I don't think I ever want to. All I know is, sometimes when I wake up in the middle of the night, I still instinctively glance at my bedroom door, just to make sure it's locked. The stranger at the window. It's been almost a year since I fled that last apartment. I thought putting miles between me and whatever happened, there would fix everything. New city, new job, new life. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. I found a place on the edge of town, a small rental. House backed up against a thick patch of woods. It was old but cozy. Quiet. Exactly the kind of place where you could imagine your life calming down. For a while it did. Months went by without incident. I even started laughing again, making plans again. I thought maybe, finally, the fear had been left behind. I was wrong. It started with small things. A door I knew I had locked would be ajar when I came home. A window I never opened would be cracked. The TV turning itself on in the middle of the night, always on static, never on a channel. I blamed my own paranoia at first. But the truth was, it wasn't just the house. It was me. Something had followed me. It all came to a head one night last fall. I had been out late at a work event. When I got home, it was close to midnight. A cold, clear night. The moon casting long shadows across the backyard. I parked, grabbed my things, and walked up to the house. That's when I noticed it. The curtain in the living room window, the one facing the street, was drawn open about 6 inches. Wide enough for someone to look out. Or in. I hadn't left it like that. I told myself maybe the wind had blown it, even though the window was closed. But something about that tiny gap made my skin crawl. I unlocked the door as quietly as I could and stepped inside. Flipping the lights on in every room, heart hammering. Nothing. No one. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I double-checked the locks, closed the curtain tightly, and headed to bed. Around 3:30 a.m., I woke up suddenly. The house was silent, but I had the distinct, sickening feeling that something was wrong. You know that heavy pressing sensation, like the air itself is warning you. That. I sat up and listened. At first, there was nothing. Then soft, almost imperceptible, came a sound. A faint tapping. Tap, tap, tap. I turned toward the noise. It was coming from the bedroom window. The window that overlooked the woods. I sat there, paralyzed, staring at the window. And then, slowly, something moved into view, a face. Pressed against the glass. It wasn't like seeing a person. It was worse. It was the outline of a man, but his features were wrong. Too sharp, too long. And his eyes hollow and bottomless, reflecting no light. I couldn't breathe. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, just watched me. Then, ever so slowly, the mouth stretched into a grotesque, unnatural grin. A smile that felt older than anything I could understand. A smile that wasn't human. I tore my gaze away, scrambled for my phone, and called 911 with shaking hands. The dispatcher stayed on the line, asking me questions I barely registered. I could hardly even form words. All I could do was stare at the window and pray that whatever was outside wouldn't break through. Sirens eventually cut through the night air, but when the police searched the property, they found nothing. No footprints in the soft dirt outside the window. No signs of anyone or anything. It was like he had never been there at all. Except I know he was. I still see his face in my nightmares. That ancient, empty smile. I've moved again since then. Smaller place. No windows facing the woods. Security cameras everywhere. But every so often, late at night, I'll wake up to a familiar sound. Tap, tap, tap. And somehow, I know, he's still watching. And this time, he's getting closer.